Hello, welcome to Chile Talk. I'm Neil Davidson. I'm with Pete Lee. Hello, Pete.
Hello.
He is in Santiago. I'm now in England, but never mind, that's not relevant. What we are here to discuss is, of course, tomorrow's presidential election runoff in Chile. It's a very close. Are we getting any polls now, Pete? No, the polls aren't allowed anymore, really, are they?
Yes, not allowed to release polls officially. I think for the last 2 weeks prior to a poll, an actual poll. But in this case, we've been getting all kinds of leaks from the various polling companies. And by all accounts, it's neck and neck in the polls.
So a close race. And is this really an election that anyone should want to win? I mean, whoever wins is going to inherit a pretty dire situation, aren't they?
Well, I think the advantage of winning is expectations will be very low. Also, your execution of any program will be heavily informed by not being able to do very much, probably because the economic conditions are not looking good for the next couple of years as far as we can forecast them. And Chile is a resources economy, so the economy is somewhat dictated by how much opportunity there is to export things like copper. And we know in advance, more or less, quite a bit about how much copper is going to be needed. So expectations will be very low, and you may not disappoint too many people with a more modest delivery than you have promised. Now, of course, that said, this is an excellent election almost to win, to come very close to winning and being a strong and stentorian opposition, criticising.
Just to sort of fill in what you said, I mean, Jose Antonio Cast was promising 5 to 7% annual growth. He's now revised that down to, I forget, 3 or 4, something much lower, which I suppose is very ambitious. Everybody seems to assume that. He's obviously got an excuse not to achieve that level of growth. If Boric wins, he's got an excuse not to raise as much money as he promised, not to whatever. Having said that, I mean, I was just reading here in the UK, actually in Europe generally, during the pandemic, there was a huge boom in venture capital, in high-tech venture capital, absolutely enormous. It's just multiplied, particularly in the UK, but elsewhere too, sort of Germany, Sweden, France a bit. It's suddenly caught up with kind of Californian levels almost. I mean, this is a whole continent catching up with one valley, you know what I mean? But all the same, it's a big change. And that's a reminder that I myself took a very static view of this pandemic. It was going to destroy jobs and so on. But of course, one forgets that when people's jobs are destroyed, they don't necessarily just sit around twiddling their thumbs, do they? So there could be surprises on the upside as well.
Well, it's interesting you should mention that, because in some ways, any chance for a high-tech boom in Chile have already been captured by boosterism in this country. And we've had a couple of unicorns of late, Chilean companies that have become billion-dollar companies, bought out by tech entrepreneurs. I can't work out whether tech entrepreneurs such as Jeff Bezos, who's recently bought out the, is it called Not Meat Company? Notco, it's called, a Chilean company that uses vegetable products to make meat-like and dairy-like products. I can't work out whether Jeff Bezos has bought that out because he desperately needs the technology of Notco, or because it's such good publicity for Amazon and other parts of his empire in Chile and in Latin America in general. I'm not sure.
But I'm sure the founders don't mind which it is too much.
Whatever it takes.
Good, good for them. That's right.
Yes, they're very rare, the unicorns. So I'm not sure. I know that there is an appetite for some kind of technological revolution in Chile, and it will certainly be heavily promoted. So Boric, on the other hand, his program has watered down so much during this lapse of time between the first round and the second round that a lot of people are calling him Boric with a K on the end, K for cast.
But that could change if he gets into power, couldn't it? Simply because the communists are strongly placed to take sort of major ministries and exert a lot of influence.
Yes, we'll have to see. I mean, Boric is such an interesting figure. And like Cast, these two figures, despite the difficult times that lay ahead and already upon us, these two figures are quite idealistic in their own ways. They're not classic centrists, and that's refreshing.
They're not opportunists, you're also suggesting. Because both of them were outside chances, weren't they? I mean, Boric, that's pretty clear. He clearly wants a major overhaul of society, more or less aligned with the way the new constitution is going, the Constitutional Convention, a lot more state, a lot more social security, social protection, state involvement in the economy. That's pretty straightforward. What's Cast's ideology? Because I mean, he's officially speaking, he's officially a strong Catholic, isn't he?
Yes. Well, interesting you should say that, because I think an interesting way to look at the current face-off between these two is in terms of the traditional Chilean conundrum: is Chile a Catholic country? Which comes from the title of a book by Alberto Hurtado, who was made a saint eventually, beatified by Pope John Paul when he came out in 87. Jesuit priest, died quite young, and asked this question: is Chile a Catholic country? Now, why would you ask that question in the first place?
And a country seems to be so obviously Catholic as Chile was, at least back then.
Yes, so obviously he was a Jesuit priest with strong suspicions of godless communism, and
a great charitable figure. He founded the Hogar de Cristo, which is this enormous Catholic charity in Chile.
Yes. So really got a lot of things done, and was really keen on the social doctrine of the church. So a way for the church to find a role and certainly resist any overly atheistic tendencies in the society, and develop in that direction. Now, this question, a lot of Latin American countries do have these conundrums. I mean, in the case of Argentina, there is barbarism or culture. Is that right? But no, civilization or barbary. Civilization or barbary. I'm mixing him up with the guy from Oxford, Matthew Arnold.
Right. Yes. Right. That's right.
Culture and Anarchy.
That's right.
And that's from Sarmiento, I think. Written in Santiago, that book, very famous book. So in Argentina, there's a tension between civilization and barbary. You can have both, but in certain proportions.
Barbarism.
Another famous example, perhaps one of the most popular ones these days, is Mario Vargas Llosa, Nobel Prize for Literature winner in 2010 from Peru. And his question: at what moment had Peru become screwed? Which is a line from his book, Conversation in the Cathedral, which is a book he wrote just as he was crossing the threshold from being a kind of communist to being one of the voices of, I guess, the liberal tendency in Latin America to this day. And Chile is Chile a Catholic country is a kind of equivalent to that.
It is. Now, the kind of answer to it is, I suppose, the usual answer, which is it's complicated. I mean, clearly, in some ways, it is a Catholic country. There's an annual pilgrimage, isn't there, in which people go on their knees in many cases from Santiago about how many miles? 50,
Oh,
80
at least
miles?
60, probably 60. Las Vasquez, yes.
Yeah, Los Vasquez, to the sanctuary near the coast on the way to Valparaiso. Sort of flagellate themselves. This is a big popular thing. So there are some real hardcore Catholics. On the other hand, if you ask when Poles ask Chileans about what they believe, a lot of them believe in things like the magnetic force emanating from mountains and, the sort of spirits of the forebears and things which aren't obviously Catholic. And then, of course, a lot of Chileans have now gone to the Protestant churches.
Yes.
Raising the question is the Catholic Church Catholic? In other words, people are obviously leaving the Catholic Church because they're finding it doesn't give them a satisfactory Christian experience,
Well, I think the Catholic Church is eclectic and it is syncretistic. So it's been very successful in adapting charismatic aspects of indigenism and so on from the very, very beginnings of its mission in Latin America. So I think it's going through difficult times at the moment with the various scandals over the last couple of decades and the inability to control media spin on those issues. But there are elements of Catholicism. But I think one way to look at these two characters is to look at Boric as a particularly profoundly cultural Catholic, and to look at Cast instead as perhaps something else. I don't want to say a Protestant Catholic, perhaps a Mormon Catholic, in the sense that Cast, his vision for society is about personal responsibility and family responsibility, which is a very kind of para-Protestant Mormon sort of position. It's kind of obviously the Church of Latter-day Saints with its kind of American Zionism, looking for the promised land and the right ways to do things, all in your family with your personal responsibility. Cass seems to fit into that. Obviously, he's coming from the Schoenstatt order or community, which is quite a conservative Chilean, rather Catholic order. It seems to have a lot of redelences with Mormonism, as far as I can tell. And Boric, just to put it on the table, everything's about the social and dignidad, all of this Catholic social doctrine, the language that was really operationalized, particularly from the 1890s and again with Vatican II in the 60s. Boric does a lot of virtue signaling, showing that he's pious, he's on the right side of history and not the wrong side of history. And that, to me, seems like a deep cultural Catholicism. Everything's about family as well, different ideas of family, very, very, in a very exaggerated way. He'll talk about the need to recognize all kinds of families, including non-man and woman marriage, which we've seen become perfectly normal over the last 20 years in the English-speaking world, but here is still on the cusp of breaking through. Obviously, Boric's movement is obsessed with what we call the Funa. In Argentina, it's called Esrache. The idea, it's stronger than deplatforming. It's
actually turning up at someone's house and banging pots and pans in their face or something, isn't it? There have been some quite famous Funas. And yes, it's considerably more interventionist than merely deplatforming.
Yes.
It's a greater commitment of time and energy. It's true. Yes.
It's a conspicuous piety, the Funa, and it's at someone else's expense. And that seems to be quite popular in Chile. So I do think there are these two models that in different ways answer the question, is Chile a Catholic country? Well, yes, but in evolving ways. Cast is able to put on the table this Mormon-like Catholicism, if you like, individual responsibility and a very strong sense that there is a right way towards the future. And on the other hand, another alternative way towards the future, some of which is about the future already being here, the social future of Boric, kind of post-Catholic.
Yes,
position.
that's it. That's it. And well, and as you say, this is Boric's. I mean, socialism in general, in many ways, is very consistent with like the origins of Christianity, isn't it? I mean, which was all about this sort of pulling together, and when Christians were thrown to the lions in the arena, apparently, the pagan onlookers would marvel and say, the kind of just the way they behave and the support, look how these Christians love each other, And I guess that's the kind of idea, isn't it? But I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as you said, both these candidates are idealistic, not even just ideological, but idealistic, because they've both got conspicuously what could be unpopular planks. I mean, self-reliance in a country like Chile, where it really is hard to get on by your own merits if you're born poor, ought to be a hard sell. And socialism ought to be a very easy sell. But on the other hand, it is a culturally conservative country, certainly amongst older people, and so all the kind of, as you say, the gender stuff could be a hard sell with older voters. This is what makes it so hard to call, really, because there could be a kind of shy vote for both sides or against both sides, couldn't there? A shy vote for Kast by people who think he's authoritarian, whether he actually is or not, but don't like to admit they want to vote for an authoritarian, and a kind of shy vote perhaps against Boric from people who think that they should be with it and with all the social change, but actually it kind of brings out a resistance to them.
Yes, well, it's funny you should say that. I mean, in the last presidential election in 2017, in the second round, there was a huge shy Piñera vote. His opposition, Alejandro Guillier, did perform particularly badly, but a lot of people came out to vote for Piñera in the second round, much more people than was expected. And this time, perhaps there could be an even bigger shy Kast vote. Perhaps there's a shy Boric vote. We just don't know. It's a very exciting election, and we're going to have to continue our double-header Election Eve special with a discussion of who's in this middle that both sides are competing for.
We should do that. We should wrap this one up before we do something reckless, like calling it for Kast when the election's tomorrow, and it's a little bit too daring, really, to call an election so late in the day. So we'll wrap it up here, and hope you'll join us for our next, no doubt, also sort of slightly, let's not say unfocused, but I think sort of wide-ranging episode. Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next time.